Imagine, for a moment, that you are standing at the edge of the sea. Waves are coming in, one after another, endlessly. Each wave appears, swells, curls, crashes, and dissolves back into the same water from which it came. If you tried to point to one wave and say, "That one, right there, that is me, and I must keep it from ever disappearing," you would be engaged in an impossible task. The very nature of a wave is to rise and to fall. To insist that it remain frozen is to demand that it cease being a wave at all. Now, consider the sense of I that you carry around inside your head. A name, a history, a collection of opinions, likes and dislikes. This feeling that there is a solid, continuous self, somewhere behind the eyes, steering the body, thinking the thoughts, owning the experiences. This you is treated as if it were like a rock. Something that ought to persist exactly as it is. Yet the reality is far closer to the sea, and closer still to the wave. It moves, it changes, it appears and disappears moment by moment. And here is the paradox. The more tightly you cling to the idea of yourself as a fixed, separate entity, the more fragile and threatened you feel. The more you insist on being somebody important, recognized, defended, the more anxious and insecure you become. But the more you learn to disappear, to relax your grip on this fixed self-image, the more spacious, alive, and real you actually feel. The more you disappear, the more you are. This sounds absurd at first, of course. We are taught that to be someone means to have a strong identity, a firm sense of self, a clear brand, a polished story about who we are and where we are going. We imagine that if we don't constantly maintain and protect this narrative, we will simply vanish, that we will be nothing, invisible, unimportant. Yet, look very closely at your experience. When are you most alive? Is it when you are anxiously thinking about yourself, wondering how you are doing, how you are being judged, whether you are succeeding or failing? Or is it when you briefly forget yourself altogether? Think of moments when you were so absorbed in music, or in a conversation, or in laughter, that you disappeared into it. There was no internal commentator saying, "I am listening to music," or "I am having a wonderful time." There was just the music, just the laughter, just the flow of the moment. And afterwards, you might say, "I felt so fully myself." But in the moment itself, you were gone. So we come to the strange realization: self-forgetting and self-fulfillment go hand in hand. The self that you are trying so hard to hold together is precisely what stands between you and the very fullness of life you long for. You can see this most clearly when you begin to notice how much effort it takes to be you. You have to remember your name, your story, your roles. You must brace yourself against criticism, protect yourself against embarrassment, maintain the image you wish others to have of you. You carry around a kind of mental resume, an ongoing internal performance review, and you are always consulting it. How am I doing? Am I enough yet? Am I ahead or behind? It is exhausting. It is like walking through a dance hall with a mirror strapped in front of your face, constantly checking how you look while attempting to dance. You cannot really join the dance because you are too busy watching yourself. To disappear, even a little, is to put the mirror down. For a moment, you stop asking, "How do I look?" and instead discover, "How does it feel?" You move with the music instead of arranging yourself for an imagined audience. And suddenly, the dance is actually happening. You're no longer staging your life. You're living it. This brings us to an important point. When we talk about disappearing, we are not talking about annihilating yourself, becoming a blank, or forcing yourself not to exist. That would be another ego project. Look at me. I have successfully destroyed myself. That, too, would be a kind of performance. No, disappearing here means something subtler. It means seeing that the you're trying to protect is largely a story, useful at times, perhaps, but still a story. It is a costume in a theater, not the actor, much less the stage on which everything appears. Consider the theater for a moment. On the stage, a character may be a king, a beggar, a villain, a hero. The costume gives them a certain role. But behind the costume, the actor is free to play any part. The trouble begins when the actor forgets that they are an actor and believes they are the costume. Then, Every threat to the costume feels like a threat to existence itself. Most people live as if they are only the costume. They say, I am this job, I am this relationship, I am this reputation, I am this body with its particular story. And so, if the job changes, if the relationship ends, if the reputation is attacked, if the body grows old or sick, it feels like death. It feels as though the very ground of being has been pulled away. But what if the costume is allowed to come and go, as costumes do, while something deeper remains? What if who you truly are is not limited to this particular mask, this particular script? What if, beneath the changing forms of your life, there is a silent, open awareness in which all of this is happening? Awareness itself does not have a name. It does not have a face. It is not male or female, old or young, important or unimportant. It is, in a sense, already disappeared. It is no thing in particular. And yet it is the space in which everything in particular arises. If you look closely, you can find that this awareness is here right now. There are sounds. There are sensations in the body. There are thoughts. There are moods. All of these are changing. They appear and disappear like waves. But that which knows the changing never itself appears as a thing. You can't see it, because it's what is seeing. You can't grasp it, because it's what is doing the grasping. You can't turn it into an object, because it is the subject of all experience. From the perspective of this awareness, disappearing is not a problem. The thoughts that made up me vanish and reappear. The emotions come and go. Even the sense of, I am this separate person, flickers on and off. And yet, something remains unmistakably present. The awake space in which all of this happens is not threatened by any of it. To discover this is to find a profound, unexpected ease. Now, you may ask, but how do I disappear? How do I let go of this tight, anxious grip on myself? That question itself reveals the trick of the mind. We tend to approach everything as a task, a project. I must work on myself, improve myself, refine and purify myself. Then, one day, I will become a perfectly enlightened me. But this approach smuggles the very problem into its solution. The me trying to disappear is still trying to control, still trying to become extraordinary, still at the center of the project. What if disappearing is not something you do, but something you allow? Notice, for instance, how often throughout the day you are absent from your own experience. When you are deeply engrossed in a book, you vanish. When you listen intently to someone you love, you vanish. When you are startled by beauty, a sunset, a piece of music, a child's laughter, you vanish. In those moments, you do not stand outside life, evaluating it. You are it. You don't have to force this to happen. Life is already full of these gaps in the story of me. The invitation is simply to recognize them, to trust them, and to no longer rush back to your narrative the moment it reappears. You see, the ego is like a narrator who is convinced that if it stops talking, the show will end. It keeps describing, judging, and explaining everything because it believes that its commentary is what keeps life going. But the show continues perfectly well without the narrator. In fact, it is often better. So imagine gently turning down the volume of this inner voice. Not because you are at war with it, but because you are curious about what else is here when it grows quiet. You look around, you feel your hands, you hear the hum of the world. You notice that life is happening in exquisite detail, with or without your commentary. In that silent noticing, where are you? You are not contained in your thoughts alone. You are not limited to the body alone. You are this entire field of experiencing. The boundary between inside and outside begins to grow porous. The sky is not just above your head, it is somehow also within your awareness. The sounds are not merely out there. They are intimately arising in the same space in which your thoughts appear. This is where the paradox begins to reveal its meaning. The more you disappear as a separate, defended entity, this tight ball of anxiety trying to control life, the more you recognize yourself as the open space in which all of life unfolds. You lose yourself as a thing and recognize yourself as no thing. And that no thing turns out to be not a void, but a fullness beyond measure. Now, let us connect this with some of the most intimate concerns of human life: love, fear, time, and death. Begin with love. When people speak of love, they often talk as if it were something they can possess. My love, your love, our love. They speak of winning love, losing love, holding on to love. But genuine love has an odd quality. The more you try to possess it, the more it slips through your fingers, the more you surrender to it, the more abundant it feels. Real love involves a subtle disappearance. When you truly love someone, you are not standing outside them, calculating what you can gain or what you might lose. For a moment, the wall between you dissolves. Their joy is your joy. Their pain is your pain. There is a sense of being with, rather than over against. In that moment, the separate me, with its demands and defenses, becomes transparent. Love is not something you have, it is something that has you. This is why love can feel so frightening. To love deeply is to risk dissolving. To care for another is to allow your boundaries to soften, to allow yourself to be moved and change. The ego, which lives by distinction and control, is naturally wary of this. It pulls back, it wants to love safely, at a distance, on its own terms. Yet the deepest longing of the heart is precisely to lose this distance. To be seen, yes, but even more, to be one with, to belong, not as a member in good standing of a club, but as a drop belongs to the sea. And so we find ourselves torn between two impulses: the impulse to remain separate and secure, and the impulse to merge and dissolve in love. The more you disappear in love, the more fully you feel alive. The more you try to stand apart and control, the lonelier you become. The same dynamic plays out with fear. Most fear is fear of loss, loss of control, loss of status, loss of security, ultimately the loss of life itself. The ego lives in constant anticipation of what could go wrong. It is like a lookout stationed on a high tower, scanning the horizon for threats. It believes that by worrying, it is doing something useful. But in truth, the majority of its fears are fantasies, ghosts created by imagination. Now, imagine that instead of trying to push fear away, you allow it to be seen. You notice that fear, too, is a wave in awareness. It rises as a sensation in the stomach, a tightness in the chest, a rush of thoughts predicting catastrophe. You watch it, you let it move, you stop claiming it as my fear, and recognize it as simply fear. Just as a cloud is simply a cloud, not yours or mine. In that moment, you begin to disappear as the one who is terrified. The fear may still be present, but there is also a watching, a knowing, that is deeper than the fear. You are not caged inside the emotion. You are the space in which the emotion appears. This recognition does not necessarily make fear vanish like a magic trick, but it changes your relationship to it. It is the difference between being caught in a storm and watching a storm from a safe shelter. And then there is time. The story of me is built almost entirely out of time. It is a saga about the past, what has been done to me, what I have done, the regrets and the glories, and it is a projection into the future, what I must achieve, what I must avoid, what might happen if things go wrong. The present moment, meanwhile, slips by almost unnoticed. Ask yourself, where, exactly, is the past right now? You can remember it, you can tell stories about it, but the memory itself is happening here, in this moment, as thoughts and images. The future, too, exists only as imagination in the present. You never actually encounter tomorrow. You encounter only a new version of now, which you then quickly label today, and move into another imagined tomorrow. The sense of being a solid self moving through time is, therefore, a kind of hypnotic spell. It is as though you are sitting in a theater, watching a movie about a character called me, and you have forgotten that you are the one sitting in the audience. You are so identified with the story on the screen that you flinch when the character is hurt and celebrate when the character succeeds. The story is gripping, to be sure, but what happens when, even for a moment, you remember the audience? You discover that, although the story is full of drama, the awareness watching it is always at rest. The character is born and dies, wins and loses, loves and grieves. The awareness in which all of this is seen does not age with the character. It is as present in the scenes of childhood as in those of old age. It is not in time. It holds time. To disappear, in this sense, means to fall out of the trance of being only the character in the story and recognize yourself as the timeless witness of the whole film. You still play your part. You still care, but you no longer believe that your being is limited to the ups and downs of the plot. And then we come to death. Nothing makes the ego more uneasy than the prospect of its own disappearance. Death, to the separate self, looks like utter annihilation, the final, irrevocable end, no more thoughts, no more experiences, a blank. Yet, notice again, what you actually know of death is only your ideas about it. You have seen bodies die. Perhaps, you have watched people you love leave the world. You have seen the forms dissolve. But you have never experienced the absence of experience. By definition, you cannot. So death, for you, is an unknown. It is a doorway you have not yet walked through. The fear of death, then, is largely the fear of the unknown and the end of the story of me. But if you have even the faintest intuition that what you truly are is not confined to this story, that there is an awareness that is not in time, then death begins to look different. It begins to look less like annihilation and more like transformation. Consider sleep. Each night, you disappear. The world, as far as your experience goes, ends. You are not consciously there to witness anything. Yet each morning, you find yourself mysteriously awake again. The world has returned. You have returned. We take this for granted. But it is a little miracle. The curtain falls. The play ceases. The curtain rises. The play resumes. If you trust the rhythm of sleep and waking, if you allow yourself to disappear into sleep without panic, why not imagine that a similar rhythm might be at work on a larger scale? Life and death as breaths of a great lung. In breath, form, out breath, formless. In breath, appearance, out breath, disappearance. The wave rises and falls, but the sea remains. Seen in this light, the fear of death is intimately tied to the fear of disappearing as a separate self. But if you have already begun to discover that disappearing brings a peculiar kind of freedom, that losing yourself in love, in beauty, in awareness itself makes you feel more, not less, alive than death, instead of being the ultimate horror, becomes, at the very least, less absolute. It becomes a mystery, yes, but a mystery that may be continuous with the disappearance you already taste in moments of surrender. So how might one live, practically, with this understanding? Imagine organizing your life less around building and defending an impressive self, and more around participating wholeheartedly in the flow of existence. Imagine measuring your days, not by how well you maintained your image, but by how fully you were present. This might mean allowing yourself to be foolish sometimes, to make mistakes, to not always have the right answer. It might mean risking vulnerability rather than hiding behind a mask of competence. It might mean listening more and talking less, feeling more and analyzing less, saying, "I don't know," more often and discovering that not knowing is a spacious, fertile place. It certainly means loosening the tight schedules and scripts you cling to in your mind. You still show up, you still fulfill your responsibilities, but you do so lightly, knowing that the world does not rest solely upon your shoulders. You are a participant in the dance, not its choreographer. It also means a different relationship to your own inner life. When thoughts arise, you notice them as clouds rather than commandments. When emotions move through, you give them room without believing they define you. When the old story of me resurfaces, with its grievances, its ambitions, its fears, you recognize it as a familiar tune playing in the background. Sometimes you hum along, but you no longer mistake it for the only song in the universe. Over time, this gentle practice of noticing and allowing begins to erode the illusion of separation. You find that, more and more often, you are simply here, uncomplicated, unguarded, present. You might be washing dishes, walking down the street, sitting in traffic, or talking to a friend, and suddenly, you realize that nothing is missing. There is no problem to solve in this moment. There is only the texture of the water on your hands, the pattern of light on the pavement, the sound of a horn, the laughter of your companion. You have, in those moments, disappeared as a separate struggler and reappeared as the moment itself. This does not mean that life becomes bland or that you lose your individuality. On the contrary, when you are no longer obsessed with protecting your image, You are freer to be unique, spontaneous, playful. The costume, instead of being a prison, becomes a delightful outfit you can wear lightly. You can enjoy quirks, preferences, talents, and roles without taking them as ultimate. Paradoxically, you may appear more vividly to others when you are less preoccupied with yourself. Have you noticed how magnetic it is to be around someone who is not constantly self-conscious? Someone who listens, who is open, who laughs easily, who is not guarding a fragile identity. Such a person feels real. You trust them, you feel more yourself in their presence. Yet, if you look closely, what they are radiating is not a carefully constructed persona, but a kind of absence of persona. They are not so much somebody impressive as no one in particular, and that absence allows something universal to shine through. This is the quiet secret. The less you are you, in the narrow sense, the more you are available as a channel for life itself. You become, in a sense, transparent, and through that transparency, the light of existence can stream, not as something supernatural, but as the simple, ordinary wonder of being here at all. So, when you hear the phrase, "the more you disappear, the more you are," you can understand it as pointing to this shift of identity. From being a cramped, defended self-image, always under threat, to being the open, spacious awareness in which this self-image, and the entire world, comes and goes. From being a wave terrified of collapsing, to recognizing yourself as the ocean expressing itself as waves. You do not need to believe this as a doctrine. Instead, you can explore it in your own immediate experience. You can, right now, notice your thoughts and see if they are truly you or if they are appearing to you. You can notice your emotions and sensations and see if they are truly you or if they are appearing in something. You can ask, without expecting a verbal answer, what is it that is aware of all this? What is it that does not come and go when everything else does? The question will not give you a neat conclusion. It will not offer you a new concept to hold on to. Instead, it invites you into a kind of living inquiry, a relaxation of your usual assumptions. It suggests that what you are seeking, security, peace, belonging, aliveness, is not somewhere in the future, waiting for you to become a better version of yourself, but is already here, hidden in plain sight, revealed whenever you disappear into what is. In this sense, the art of living is less about acquiring more and more about shedding what is false. Dropping pretenses, dropping rigid opinions, dropping unnecessary resistance, letting go of the idea that you must constantly become something other than what you are. As these layers fall away, what remains is not a hollow void, but a simple presence. You find that it is enough just to be. To breathe, to see, to listen, to feel the heartbeat in your chest and the earth beneath your feet. To participate in this great unfolding without needing to stand apart and assess it. And as you rest more often in this simple being, the great paradox begins to feel less like an abstract puzzle and more like a lived truth. You disappear, and yet you are more yourself than ever. You stop insisting on being special, and what appears as a uniqueness that needs no defense. You stop trying to control everything, and discover that life has its own intelligence, its own rhythm, that carries you along. You stop clinging to your story, and discover that you are more than any story could ever say. The wave vanishes, and the sea remains. The costume is set aside, and the actor relaxes. The character's arc reaches its final scene, and yet the screen on which the movie played is untouched. The more you disappear, the more you are. So let this not be merely a thought to entertain for a moment and then file away. Let it be, instead, a seed, planted gently in the soil of your everyday life. When you next find yourself caught in anxious self-concern, remember, the one who is anxious is a wave. Pause. Feel the larger ocean. When you are tempted to guard your image at all costs, remember, the image is a costume. Pause. Sense the freedom of being the actor behind the role. When you are afraid of loss, of change, of endings, remember, what you truly are has never been a fixed thing. It has always been the open space in which all forms arise and vanish. Do not force yourself to accept this. Do not turn it into a new idol to bow down to. Simply keep it nearby, like a small bell, and from time to time, let it ring softly in your awareness. The more you disappear, the more you are. Listen to that bell not with the mind alone, but with your whole being. As you listen, you may notice that there is, underneath all the striving and struggling, a quiet, already existing peace, a simple okayness at the heart of things. Not a peace you manufacture, but a peace you uncover when you stop insisting that reality conform to your plans. That peace is not yours or mine. It does not belong to any person or philosophy. It is like the space in a room, always there, regardless of the furniture that comes and goes. When the furniture is removed, the space is simply more obvious. The process of disappearing is, in the end, like moving the furniture. Bit by bit, you stop cluttering your inner house with unnecessary judgments, fears, and stories. Bit by bit, the space reveals itself, and in that space, you find that what you have been seeking all along was not a better version of me, but freedom from the illusion that you were ever only me to begin with. So, as this reflection draws to a close, let it settle in you as a kind of meditation. You do not need to become anything more to be what you are. You do not need to secure the future to rest in the present. You do not need to cling to your identity to exist. You can allow yourself to disappear, again and again, into this moment, into love, into the simple awareness of being. And each time you do, you will discover, to your quiet astonishment, that nothing real is lost. You are still here. But you has grown wider, gentler, more spacious, less afraid. The more you disappear, the more you are.